Williams says Saturday night a few scuffles broke out as protesters walked down a street lined with popular eateries.
At that point, we deemed that things had gotten unsafe, not only for the general public, but for the protesters and the officers themselves, and we made the decision to disperse.
Around 70 people were arrested after police in helmets and shields converged on protesters. They're scheduled for arraignment today in a special holiday court session. Standing outside Cleveland's Justice Center on Sunday, Rachel Smith says that with those arrests, she and other activists felt like the wind had been knocked out of them. She says while protest movements in other parts of the country took off quickly, such as after the shooting death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that didn't happen here.
Whereas we've seen large community responses to Mike Brown and some of the other things that have happened, Cleveland was a slow starter in that response, and the why is a really big question.
Local leaders think they may have part of the answer. For weeks, the city has been organizing community groups in preparation for the verdict. The judge announced his decision on a Saturday morning because there'd be minimal downtown traffic, according to the court. And in daylight hours, police have allowed protesters to have their say.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
On Cleveland's east side, about a dozen people marched through the streets yesterday. Though the crowd was small, many in this neighborhood sympathized with them. As she left church nearby, Donna Pulley said prosecutors should have charged other officers who opened fire as well.
They should have someone held responsible for it. But there's 2 people dead, and the one person that they say should have been responsible is walking the street just like me and you.
But another case here may draw greater attention. The fatal shooting of 12-year-old Tamir Rice by a Cleveland officer last November. It's one of several police incidents still under investigation in Cleveland. Last year, Tanisha Anderson, a woman with mental illness, died as officers took her into custody. Her family has sued the city. Also last year, a Justice Department report cited police here for a pattern and practice of using unreasonable force. The city is now negotiating reforms. At the end of the East Side protest, Shantea McCurdy said she hopes those reforms will yield a police department that better knows the neighbors it serves.
You relate to those people when something bad does happen, they feel safe and feel okay talking to you about it. But as long as that us against them attitude, you'll never get nowhere with them, because the people that are good and bad fear the police.
Downtown last night, the number of people attending the Cavaliers-Hawks playoff game far outnumbered the handful of protesters who tried to block traffic just outside. The gathering of fans included those who feel police deserve more credit for their work. While more demonstrations could happen this week, many here appear grateful that an atmosphere of nonviolence has prevailed as the city continues to wrestle with major contentious issues between residents and the police. For NPR News, I'm Nick Castell in Cleveland.
Next, a story where religion and sports collide. Runners usually have groups they like and others they avoid. That becomes much tougher if you're a woman in a conservative society where some oppose women running in sports gear. That's why one Palestinian woman, an Arab citizen of Israel, prefers to jog in Jewish areas. Recently, she tried organizing a race in her own town and faced threats. And here's Emily Harris reports.
It's race day in the Israeli beach town of Netanya. Runner Haneen Radi rounds up the girls she coaches and brought here today. Her young runners are excited. 15-year-old Mais Mishara is about to run her first 10K. She joined Radi's club a few months ago and she loves it.
It's so exciting and I feel so good when I run.
They all came from Tira, an Arab Israeli town, a half-an-hour drive inland. But Bishara says the team doesn't run there.
We try to run in Tira, but no results for this. They don't want us to run in Tira.
Who they are is part of this story, which starts with Haneen Radi, the girls' coach, and her dream of promoting running in her community. She tells me about this back in Tira.
We decided 3 months ago to organize a marathon here in my own town to bring health, to bring something really good to my own people, sport.
But not everyone liked the idea.
Certain people came to the municipality over here and said, they said that you can do a marathon, but just for males, not for females. No, I said no. You cannot put women aside, they have to participate.
Threats were made to disrupt the race. Then someone shot Radi's car when it was parked outside her home.
I didn't feel really afraid when I heard the threat.
صعب كثير 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 مش سهل يعني.
But when they shot my car, I felt really afraid.
Opinion in town was split. An 80-year-old woman sitting outside her dress shop said women runners would have to cover up. Shorts or tank tops were unacceptable. A middle-aged fruit vendor blamed bearded men he described as crazy. He meant Muslim religious leaders, but devout Muslims were also divided. Outside a mosque, Rashad Ftheli, a member of a political Islamic group, said he opposed a co-ed marathon.
Our religion tells us to take care of our girls' honor, so we won't let them go out and let boys look at them.
Inside, the man who calls others to pray 5 times a day, Rashid Mansour, said he had no problem with women running in sports clothes in public.
When we go to Tel Aviv or the beach, we see people in different clothing and nothing happens.
More than 100 people rallied in Tira shortly after the shooting to support Haneen Roddy and her hope to hold a marathon. Roddy says she wants to keep promoting running.
The person when I am running, I'm happy, I'm smiling.
للأحسن كثير غير بحياتي للأحسن.
Changed a lot of things to the better in my life, the fact that I'm running.
But the threats changed things too. Now she doesn't want to take the lead in organizing the race. Tira resident Asma Khoury does no sports herself, but she hopes Haneen Roddy won't give up.
They want to frighten her. They want her to be scared to stop doing that. I hope she's not going to stop. We need her to be strong because she brought something new to Tira, and we are very proud of her.
Police questioned one suspect in the shooting and let him go. Some city officials say they hope to host a marathon open to all, but there is no date set. Emily Harris, NPR News, Tira, Israel.
And on this Memorial Day, let's reflect on the meaning of the holiday. Carmela Laspada is a longtime advocate for veterans. Back in 1996, she talked with a group of kids visiting Washington, D.C.
And I said, Memorial Day is next Monday. And I said, do you know what the meaning of Memorial Day is, what it's all about? And they all looked at each other. And in unison, they said, oh, that's the day the swimming pool's open.
Laspada was worried adults were also losing sight of the day's true purpose to honor those killed while serving in the armed forces. So she asked Congress to establish a national moment of remembrance, which it ultimately did. The idea is to stop whatever you are doing for a quiet moment of reflection at 3 p.m. local time.
As we come to the 3 o'clock hour, all the fans are to their feet. All of the flags have been lowered to half-mast.
NASCAR has its drivers pull over mid-race. Major League Baseball pauses its games, and Amtrak trains blow their whistles. For many, it's a more private moment.
I am Howard Rittenbaugh, a national coordinator for Bugles across America.
His organization sends buglers to play taps for free at military funerals.
I make sure that prior to 3 p.m., I am on the highest spot in Riverview Cemetery up above Huntington, Pennsylvania, and I stand there and I wait for the church bells to finish pealing the hour at 3. I sound taps, I salute, and I walk away.
He says he usually performs this ritual alone, but one year he noticed a couple watching him.
The lady said it's a shame there aren't more people to hear that. And I said, well, I really don't do it for the people that might be able to stand here to hear this. I do it for these. And I kind of waved my arm out across, indicating the hundreds of flag-adorned grave markers that were surrounding us.
That's Howard Rittenbaugh, one of many who will be marking the national moment of remembrance this Memorial Day at 3 o'clock this afternoon, wherever you are.
You're listening to Morning Edition on WNYC in New York. I'm Richard Hake. Good morning. It's 7:18, currently 66 degrees. Stay tuned. Coming up, it was a weekend full of celebrations in El Salvador, honoring the life and work of slain Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was beatified over the weekend. That story is coming up next. Coming up a little bit later on the Leonard Lopate Show, conversations about navigating the teenage years. A neurologist talks about parenting a developing adolescent brain. That's coming up today at noon on WNYC.
WNYC support comes from Shows for Days, a new comedy by Douglas Carter Bean about his early days in theater, directed by Jerry Zaks. Previews begin June 6th at Lincoln Center Theater. Tickets at lct.org. The New York Philharmonic, performing Mozart's Turkish Violin Concerto and Brahms's Fourth Symphony, conducted by Manfred Honeck, this Thursday through Saturday at Avery Fisher Hall. Tickets at nyphil.org.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. On this Memorial Day, U.S. military veterans who died serving their country are being remembered in cities and towns large and small. Retired Marine Corps Sergeant Randall Shuck is among those riding motorcycles in Washington, D.C., taking part in the annual Rolling Thunder event. He says the Vietnam Memorial and what it represents inspires him.
It's not the ones that are here, it's the ones that are on the wall that ride with me. And it's a pretty emotional thing to have them. Every Marine knows it, every soldier knows it, sailor, airman.
This is also a federal holiday. There is no trading on Wall Street. Dozens of graves have been discovered in Malaysia. They're believed to contain the remains of trafficked migrants from Bangladesh and Myanmar, also known as Burma. As Michael Sullivan reports, it's the latest twist in the migrants' ongoing tale of misery.
Malaysia's national police chief says there are at least 139 graves. One of them, he says, was found about 100 yards from a camp on the Thai side where police discovered the bodies of more than 24 migrants earlier this month. That prompted the Thai crackdown on traffickers, which prompted the traffickers to abandon many migrants at sea. Thousands are still believed to be trapped on smugglers' boats.
And weekend flooding in Texas and Oklahoma has left 3 people dead. Hundreds of homes were damaged or destroyed along the Blanco River in Texas between Austin and San Antonio. I'm Dave Mattingly in Washington.
I'm Richard Hake on WNYC in New York. Police are investigating a fatal stabbing in the East New York section of Brooklyn. Officers responded to a 911 call about a stabbing inside a residential building yesterday. They found 54-year-old Russell Holdip stabbed multiple times. He was pronounced dead at a hospital. So far, no arrests. A woman is dead. Another is facing drunk driving charges after a car crash in Harlem early yesterday. Police say 24-year-old Chanel Emanuel of Bayonne, New Jersey, was driving north on the Harlem River Drive when she lost control and hit a tree. Her passenger was taken to Harlem Hospital where she was pronounced dead. Emanuel was arrested on charges of driving while intoxicated and driving without a license. Voters in Ireland